Monday, August 21st. It took me a long time to fall asleep last night. I was thinking about this. Eric's arrival is going to change the football season at Lake Windsor High School. Dad's arrival is going to change how things are done in the civil engineering department in Tangerine County. Mom's arrival will change the homeowners association in Lake Windsor Downs. So what about me? Will I make the difference between winning and losing for the middle school's soccer team? I have this sense that great things are expected of us here. Dad calls this a booming area, but it's no Houston. It's not even a Huntsville. It's like we're major leaguers who've been sent down to a minor league city for a while. We're expected to do great things here and then move back up to the big leagues. I got down to breakfast just as Dad was leaving. He was halfway out the door and he did not look happy. He was lecturing Mom. "You ought to file a complaint against that fireman. You ought to call the county and complain about the slow response time. Then you ought to complain about them sending some jerk kid out here who doesn't know what he's doing or what he's talking about." I don't know why, but I immediately rose to Wayne's defense. "He sure seemed to know what he was talking about, Dad. He sure knew all about the muck fire." Dad snapped back, "No professional shows up 20 minutes late wearing cutoffs. If he worked for me, he'd be fired." Then he was out the door, leaving me with my unanswered questions. Fired for what, Dad? For telling us the truth? For telling us something that you didn't know? That you should have known? After breakfast, I joined Mom in one of the guest bedrooms. We'd taken on the job of unpacking the boxes. We'd already worked our way through the great room, the living room, and the dining room. "Shade and storage space," Mom said, "are two things that you do not get in Florida. People pack up their northern homes with their attics and basements and tiny upstairs rooms that nobody ever uses, and they move into these Florida homes that are as wide open as cathedrals. All the house space down here is devoted to air and light, nothing to storage." Mom had, of course, anticipated this problem. Before the movers came, we had set aside everything that we would not use on a regular basis in Florida. All of these items are now stocked in a climate-controlled storage space just west of here, out on Route 22. We probably have as much stuff out there as we do here in the house, including most of Mom's antiques, which just aren't Florida. It occurred to me, as we unpacked the things that are Florida, that Mom might actually hate moving out here. But of course, she would never say anything about it. Just like she would never have told Grandmom and Grandpop about hating any of those moves of her childhood. Mom would never waste her time complaining. Just like she would never waste her time worrying about the past. Later in the afternoon, we drove up Route 89, past new developments with new walls and guardhouses, past a long row of high-tension wires, to the adjoining campuses of Lake Windsor High School and Lake Windsor Middle School. All the way there, we seemed to be riding side by side with black storm clouds. "I hope we get in there before the rain starts," Mum muttered as we turned at Seagull Way into the enormous black-topped parking lot of the campus. We drove past the long, windowless, two-story high school and around the football stadium to the middle school. The middle school office is located in a one-story building that looks like the younger brother of the high school building. We made it inside just as the first bolts of lightning cracked around us. While Mom gave my name to the secretary, I looked through a glass door at a field full of small wooden shacks. They take up most of the space between this main building and the steel bleachers of the high school football stadium. "I wonder who gets put in those shacks," I said, turning to Mom. She was now standing with a tall, thin woman with jet black hair. The woman eyed me coldly and said, "All 7th and 8th graders are in portable classrooms. The main building is for 6th graders only." Mom did not look pleased. The woman continued, "I'm Mrs. Gates. I'm the principal here at Lake Windsor Middle School." Mom extended her hand. "I'm Caroline Fisher. This is my son, Paul." "Hello, Paul," she said. "What can I tell you folks about Lake Windsor Middle?" "We were hoping to see exactly where Paul will be going next week. He has problems with his eyesight. He's legally blind, so we were hoping to make a dry run today." Mrs. Gates looked hard at my glasses. She seemed to be trying to think of a way out of this, but she finally said, I see. All right, let's take a quick tour." Mrs. Gates and Mom took off at a fast walk. I followed slowly, angry at Mom for calling attention to my eyesight. She wanted a tour of the place because she's nosy and wants to see everything for herself. It wasn't because I can't see, because I can. I can see just fine. We call this the building, Mrs. Gates explained. It contains the main office, the cafeteria, the library, and the sixth-grade classrooms. Don't you have an auditorium? Mum asked. The cafeteria doubles as an auditorium. What about a gym? When we need to, we use the high school's gymnasium. But where do you have your PE classes? Oh, we always have physical education outdoors on one of our fields. And when it rains? Then we have it indoors in the classrooms. Surely they don't do jumping jacks in those wooden portables. No, on a rainy day, the PE teachers will most likely concentrate on other parts of their curriculum, such as healthcare or good nutrition. We were outside now, facing the portables. There must be 40 of them, all connected by a system of wooden walkways, the kind of boardwalks you see at the beach. Only these stretch over some sick-looking grass and a lot of brown dirt. Mrs. Gates was speaking rapidly. Each portable is, of course, air-conditioned. As you can see, all of the buildings on our campus are grounded with lightning rods for our afternoon storms. Mum eyed the field with alarm. How would you ever know if there was some emergency out here? Mrs. Gates turned to her and asked, Like what? I froze. Even I could hear the annoyance in her voice. Mum locked eyes with her. Does it really matter? Like what? Do I really have to provide you with an example of what constitutes an emergency? Mrs. Gates retreated. No, of course not. Each portable is connected to the main office by a telephone and a public address system, and each has its own pull alarm in case of fire. We all stared at the crisscross of wooden walkways until Mrs. Gates asked, What brings your family to Tangerine? My husband's job. He's the new deputy director of civil engineering for the county. I see. Large drops of rain started to fall around us, so we headed back inside. Mum prompted me, Paul, do you have any questions? Yes. Do you have a soccer team? We do. We have an excellent soccer program, a boys' team and a girls' team. We play against all the schools in this area. Are you a soccer fan? I'm a soccer player, I corrected her. I play goalie. We were now back in the main office. Mrs. Gates led us through into her private office. Mrs. Fisher, I'd like to get you to fill out an IEP for Paul, an individualized education plan. Being vision impaired, Paul is entitled to take part in our IEP program. Basically, we identify Paul's situation, set specific goals for him to achieve, and note any special needs that he may have. Mum started to read the form. I stepped outside to show how much I did not want part of that conversation. I spotted a glass trophy case and went to check it out. The biggest trophy was for last year's boys' soccer team. It said first place, Tangerine County Sports Commission. Mum came out of the office briskly. We ran through the cold rain to the car. Once we were inside and belted up, she said, So, what do you think of Lake Windsor Middle School? I don't know, I mumbled, staring out the window. We drove past the field of portables, but Mum suddenly hit the brakes. Look at that, she cried. The field was now completely flooded, like a rice paddy. The brown water had risen to within inches of the wooden walkways. We both shook our heads in disbelief. Then I decided to answer her question about the school. I guess if they have a decent soccer team, I'll let them slide about not having indoor classrooms and not having a gym. Yeah, Mum sputtered. Not having a gym or an auditorium? 2 more facts apparently overlooked by your father. And what am I supposed to do? Send you to school every day in rain gear? With an umbrella? Mum would never say it, but I bet we were thinking the same thing. What else has Dad overlooked about Tangerine? We drove on in silence, except for the pounding of the rain, from the flooded campus of Lake Windsor Middle School to the flooded streets of Lake Windsor Downs.